Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon TCG Pocket video here on iStarly TV. Shining Revelry has now dropped, it is now live in-game, so you can open packs of Shiny Revelry, and Ranked is coming, I think, later today as of the making of this video, so Ranked is almost here, which is really exciting. But either way, I am doing this video that has become something of a tradition when a new set drops on TCG Pocket, which is making my video with 3 new decks to try out. And in the past, I've made these decks. My goal with these decks is to try to make somewhat unique decks, try to build around cards and interactions that I think not a lot of people are focusing on. So, for example, in the previous set, I tried not to make too many like Arceus decks because that was kind of the obvious card of the set. I did make an Arceus deck, but my point is, I'm trying not to make the super obvious overpowered decks because it feels like I don't mind playing those and I don't mind those decks at all, but it just feels like it's kind of obvious how to build some of those decks. And a lot of people are going to kind of figure it out quickly anyway, so I just wanted to try something different. But with that being said, let's get to my 3 decks for Shining Revelry in TCG Pocket. My first deck is Solo Grass Meow, so this is a Meowscarada deck, and what I think is unique, obviously if you look at the cards in this deck, it's not super revolutionary or anything. These are some pretty well-known, strong cards. But my thought process with this deck is to play the Meowscarada line as the only grass types in the deck. So I wanted to avoid, at least for the building of this deck, putting other grass Pokemon with Meowscarada. Which, the reason for that is because of Sprigatito's move called Cry for Help, which lets you find a grass Pokemon from your deck and put it into your hand. So because the Meowscarada evolutions are the only grass Pokemon in this deck, you are guaranteed to find either a Sprigatito, a Florigato, or a Meowscarada. So it just kind of helps make things more consistent. And if we were playing other grass Pokemon, you might draw some of those, which can be maybe awkward. But again, Arceus and Druddigon are not weak cards. Everyone knows how good those cards are. So I just wanted to kind of try it out like this. As for the trainers, new things, I have 1 copy of Red. I think Red is a good card to play. As I talked about in my previous video, I'm hesitant to play 2 copies of Red in everything. I think 1 copy of Red is probably where you want to be because we really need to see where the meta shakes out. Because if you play 2 copies of Red and then your opponent is playing the Lucario Rampardos deck, for example, which has no EXs, and you have a red or 2 in your hand, that card does nothing. So it's kind of something that you need to really think about, which is really interesting. You need to consider, what is the opponent playing or what are people these days playing? Of course, EX Pokemon are strong. They always will be. I don't think there's ever going to be a world where there's 0 EXs in play where people are not playing EXs ever. So Red will still have relevance, but again, going overboard with Red, I think, could be a problem. The rest of the trainers are pretty self-explanatory. I have 1 copy of Erica because we only have, the Meowscarada line as our grass Pokemon. Everything else I think makes some sense. Of course, we're getting to a point now with so many good trainers and supporters in the game that you get to a point where it becomes very difficult to choose which ones go in the deck, right? I'd love to fit everything. I'd love to play Potion. I'd love to play, 2 copies of Erica. I'd love to play, I already said Potion, maybe Rocky Helmet, but of course we just could not fit all of that in the deck, and I think all of these cards are really good. Our next deck is called Snorlax 18. This is a Snorlax 18 trainer deck. This is a wild one, I would say. You've seen a lot of decks with EX Pokemon with only 18 trainers and only 2 copies of that EX, like Articuno, Pachirisu. I've seen some Palkia. But this deck only plays Snorlax in that slot. And so if you look at it here, we have Snorlax with 18 trainers. And this is the Snorlax from Triumphant Light. I've been really enjoying playing this card. I think it's really strong and it's a lot of fun too. And of course the fact that it's not an EX means even if the opponent knocks you out, you only lose 1 point. They only get 1 point from that. So yeah, this is how I built the deck. And yeah, we have 1 copy of Pokeball mainly for finding the second one just in case we don't, just because we really want to try to have both Snorlaxes in play if we can, just to kind of absorb damage and, just in case one of them gets knocked out. I'm also playing Celestic Town Elder because if Snorlax gets knocked out, we can just bring it right back, which can be really cool. And this is a deck where we will be playing Water Energy, so that means we're going to be playing Irida. So Irida is another way to heal. And also the new card, this is a big reason why I wanted to build this deck, the brand new card, Pokemon Center Lady, which heals 30 from your Pokemon and removes any status conditions from it. So this is perfect for Snorlax because Snorlax's move, Collapse, automatically puts it to sleep. So obviously you want to wake up, and in playing this card I've had some decent success with it, and the sleep hasn't been too much of an issue because you go Collapse, you put yourself to sleep. When it goes to their turn, you flip a coin. If you flip tails, then when it goes back to your turn, you get to flip again. So you have a couple of chances to wake up. There are some rare cases where you'll stay asleep. Well, you'll get both tails, but eventually you're gonna get that head. So I still think Pokemon Center Lady is great with this card because, of course, she also heals you. But the big kind of question is going to be between Pokemon Center Lady and Irida because both of them can heal you, but both of them are supports. So, of course, you cannot play both of them in the same turn. But we still have Potion. You know, everything else I think makes a lot of sense in this deck as well. Berry, of course, is absolutely important for this card. For this card to function because it allows you to attack so much earlier. And yeah, we're gonna try this deck out. It might not be good. You might need the extra like attackers that don't require as much energy, but when Snorlax goes off, it feels really strong. And again, when your opponent knocks out Snorlax, which is difficult to do given that massive HP stat, they only get 1 point. The biggest weakness to this deck is going to be the Rampardos deck because Rampardos can one-shot you. So maybe right now I have 2 helmets. I'm bigger on helmet than cape, but if you're worried about Rampardos, maybe you want to play more copies of cape instead. And finally, my last deck here is Dondozo Tatsugiri. So this is another deck that I'm playing, that I'm featuring here, that doesn't have an EX Pokemon in it. I like the EXs, they're cool, but also they're kind of like, I'm unsure about them. And also, a lot of them are kind of like, again, self-explanatory to build. It's like, if you want to play the new Charizard, you're just going to be replacing the original Charizard. If you want to play the new Pikachu, there are some cards that you might play that are different, but it's kind of a self-explanatory deck as well. I thought about building a deck with the new Clodsire EX, which looked really cool, but then I was like, okay, I'm going to play Darkrai with it, and then I'm like, oh, well, at that point, it just feels like another Darkrai deck. I guess you could argue that my Arceus deck, my Meowscarada Arceus deck, is just another Arceus deck, but either way. This is a fun deck. Tatsugiri is one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 9. I don't know what it was. I mean, I do love sushi, but I just thought this was such an awesome Pokemon, and it became easily one of my favorites from Gen 9. So seeing that it gets a card in Shining Revelry made me really excited. Dondozo's fine. I mean, I did a lot of competitive battling for Gen 9, and Dondozo was one of the most annoying Pokemon to play against, but here, hopefully he's a lot more stable, I guess. And this deck also has 0 EX Pokemon, but I think it can still function really well without them. Of course, we get Misty and Irida, given that our deck is playing all water types. We also get Manaphy, which can load up energy onto our Dondozo and Origin Form Palkia, both of which require a lot of energy, and both of which can be very, very powerful, and have pretty massive HP stats. And once again, it's difficult to knock these Pokemon out, and when the opponent knocks them out, they only get 1 point rather than 2. So I think that's something nice. And of course, if you run into something like Meowscarada or people who are playing red, you can just kind of shut them down completely with this deck and the Snorlax deck because their cards are not going to be anywhere near as good as they're supposed to be. And the rest of the deck is pretty self-explanatory, I think. I'm playing 2 Cyrus instead of the Cyrus-Sabrina split. Dondozo's a really funny and interesting Pokemon because it's basically like a knockoff Articuno. Obviously, it's worse than Articuno, but the one upside it has is that it gives them only 1 point when it gets knocked out. And also, for what it's worth, if you have a Tatsugiri in play, Dondozo can retreat for free. So that can be pretty strong. I guess Dawn is another good card you could play in this deck because you can retreat Dondozo for free and then put Dawn the energy onto something else. Maybe another Dondozo, that would be really strong. But anyways, why I'm playing Cyrus is because Dondozo's Ocean Cyclone is basically like Blizzard, where it does 80 damage to the active Pokemon and then 10 damage to all of their benched Pokemon. So putting damage on something with Cyclone and then using Cyrus to pull it into play and then attack again with Dondozo the next turn is really strong. So that's the deck, and those are my 3 decks for Shining Revelry. They all look like a lot of fun, and honestly, like, I had a tough time coming up with decks for this one because I did want to feature these Pokemon, but there was a lot that I wanted to build around, so I think that's a good sign for the set. I do still think the set feels a little weaker, but there's still some really exciting cards, and there's a lot of EXs, which is kind of surprising for a small set, so I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I will also say that I opened a beautiful shiny Lucario on one of my first packs, Lucario EX. So hopefully that's not all of my luck for this set, but I hope you have a lot of luck in your pulls. Let me know in the comments what you think of these decks, how you would make them better. What are some decks that you are excited to build in this new set? And how are your pulls going? Let me know if you've got any shinies. Leave a like, subscribe, comment for more, and we will see you soon.